Yeah, Brooklyn. 12 town.
Hey, better than I. I have no idea where it is.
Yeah, okay, all right. We're all set.
I'm just waiting for
Sure.
you guys to come in. Okay, I'm all set.
Great. Like to call to order the Summers Board of Selectmen meeting, December 21st, 2021. I'd like to start with Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Got out of practice, Tim, after doing it 180 times a year.
We're working on getting a Connecticut flag in here.
Yeah, they did come,
Well,
they're
okay.
down in the
It's
veterans
coming.
office, they
All
just
right.
have to put them up.
Okay, so with me tonight we have Selectman Bill Meyer and Selectman Bob Schmidt. And we have Operations Director Kim LaFleur. Any correspondence? Yeah, we did receive, of course, some a check that was dropped off, qualifies correspondence from USA Hauling to support the Community Development Fund for $5,000, and I just wanted to acknowledge them that gift and thank them for their contribution.
Great.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
What is it going for, Tim? Do you?
Well, in the past, we've used it for the
Summers
Summers
Connects.
Connect, our
Summers
our,
Connect.
Continue
Okay.
unless.
way to
you know,
communicate with the public every few months.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll be doing one in January, just FYI. Or
Okay.
If anybody has anything,
All
I'm
right.
happy to add it.
Okay.
Great. So the next subject on our agenda is the discussion and consideration of the replacement of the town sanitarian position. I'd just like to start out by sort of describing the situation when I arrived on the scene. First of all, Steve Jacobs, the current town sanitarian, is retiring after 36 years
Yep.
of service. He's been terrific, and it's been a great boon for the town. It's worked out quite well. He's leaving as of the end of 2021. He actually announced this, I think, some 6 months ago. I didn't. On the 19th of October, a email was sent from First Selectman Knorr to Selectman Patricus and myself. And basically stating that there, in Selectman Knorr's opinion, there were 4 options available. One was replacing Steve with a qualified, experienced, registered sanitarian. And the second one was to form our own health district by combining 3 local towns with similar needs and populations. A third was joining the North Central Health District, and the fourth was contract with a partner in another town that has their own health district for services currently rendered by our town sanitarian. And Selectman Knorr basically looked at the options and came back and said, in his view, the best option was the fourth option, contracting with the town of South Windsor. He had visited South Windsor, I believe, with Steve Jacobs, and had met with the town manager, Mike Maniscalco, the assistant town manager, Scott Roberts, and the health director of health, Heather Otis, and they proposed a contractual arrangement where they would hire an individual that would be dedicated to work 4 summers, I think, in situ here in this building. And they had various costs laid out. The cost was about the same, don't you think, Bill? Is that what you look at there? About the same as what we currently paid for Mr. Jacobs, because it would be about $151,000, but it would allow us to offset that with the revenues that were it came from the work that was done, and also there would be no fringe benefits that went along. There was a contrast. Anyway, bottom line was it was about the same cost as we were currently paying at the time. So at our first Board of Selectmen meeting, I mean, my primary concern was making sure that town had coverage after Steve left. Also, the fact that even though the previous work was very well accepted, my thought was, and I think you agreed with me, that the other selectmen agreed with me, that we needed to have a separate group, an ad hoc committee that we appointed to review what options were out there and to report back to us with what they thought was the best option, so that we would have a more broad-based input for a recommendation. And those included people like Kathy Devlin on the Board of Finance, Brian Zappla, Superintendent of Schools, Allison Maynard, our Social Services Director, Brian Wissinger, Assistant Finance, Paul Salva, a well-known doctor in the community who's worked on, who had also been on the previous committee that was created, I think, 6 or 7 years ago, to look into whether or not we needed to, I think, join a health district. And we also added Patrice Carson because of her experience with regards to land use. So that was the group that we appointed. They believe they first met about, and we asked that they report back to us within 30 days, thinking that we could probably get a report back before the end of the year. And that we understood at that time that there would probably be a lag time of probably 2 to 3 months that it would take us, whatever they recommended, it would take us to make that arrangement, execute the arrangement, whatever they suggested. So we started looking for, let's see.
Well, Allison had said last Thursday, correct, that they had she had said that they had set up a plan and they were going to talk to certain people.
They did. I went to their first meeting, and I think they were all there except for Paul Salva, and became obvious that they're going to have trouble having meetings during the holiday season. Of course, we were aware of that, but still thought it was possible, and we also gave them in our charge a group of probably 8 or 9 people that we thought they ought to at least speak to. So they started going down that list, and also I was speaking to our own employees, Steve Jacobs, Jen Roy, and to get input from them as to what their concerns were and what their thoughts were. And simultaneously, let's see. So it became obvious that the ad hoc committee was going to have great difficulty getting back to us within the time period we thought was possible. It was going to take another week or 2 at least. So simultaneously, we were searching for additional solutions. Steve Jacobs came up with a candidate he thought might be a possible consideration, and that was Andrea Vetrano. Steve talked to her. She was interested. Andrea had many of the credentials we were looking for, except she wasn't a registered sanitarian. She had still needed to pass the Phase 2 test, as well as the statewide exam for registered sanitarians. But Steve thought that she could be a possibility. We interviewed her 2 days later. In the interview with myself, Steve Jacobs, Jen Roy, and who else was in that?
Luigi Sartori.
Luigi, what's his last name? Sartori, who's the town health director, but works maybe a couple of hours a week for the town. And the thought was that Andrea was indeed impressive. She had good credentials. She had excellent grades in her bachelor's degree in environmental science. She didn't have a lot of practical experience, particularly in the area of inspecting septic systems, but she could gain that by doing field work. And then the thought was that if Andrea was acceptable, it would only work if she had a supervisor, someone that could work with her and help train her and encourage her to take the state exams when they were offered, and she indeed expressed an interest in that. So Steve then discovered he had a couple of other, because it's a small community, all these registered sanitarians know each other. Steve inquired about a couple of other people that he knew had recently retired who might be interested in coming back on a part-time basis and providing that level of supervision that we needed. So he talked to Steve Knopf, who had recently been he'd been a sanitarian for about 35 years. Recently retired with 17 years service as the chief sanitarian for the Chatham Health District, which I believe is located in Brooklyn, Connecticut, with 12 towns that participate. Previously to that, he'd been the sanitarian for the town of Hebron for about 6 years, which is the same size as the town of Somers. And prior to that, he'd worked for the Northeast District Department of Health for 3 years. So he's a very experienced individual. I called him, spoke with him, explained to him what we would need, and it just so happened that Stephen had recently retired about a year and a half ago, and that one of his goals in retirement was to encourage and seek younger individuals who could qualify as registered sanitarians. And he was very interested in coaching and bringing along a younger person. So I thought it sounded like to me a pretty good match. I met with him 2 days later, back on the last Friday, which was, what was that date? The December 17th?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, 17th.
17th, right. Right.
We met on the 16th.
I know.
And
I'd have to subtract the days back.
it turns out that Steve was very motivated, very interested, obviously very capable, and said he would be willing to do it on a part-time basis, say approximately 15 hours a week. We decided on a per hour fee, and I spoke with Andrea earlier this week on Monday, and she thought that would work very well for her. We sent her a letter basically recognizing, contingent upon support of the Board of Selectmen, but I thought that we could get that, having a pretty good understanding of the two of you, that this would be a workable solution. And it could be a workable solution for the long term if it works out. So that's pretty much where we are right now. I think that we have a solution that will work. Andrea would come on as an employee of the town. There would be a review period of 3 months that could be extended by an additional 3 months if needed, as to whether it was going to work out. And as far as I was concerned, of all the options, the best option I thought for the town, which has been my motivation from the beginning, was a person who would be located in this building that worked for me or worked for the town, that would be accountable to the town directly. And I think even though this is sort of a patchwork approach, I think it gives us the elements that we need and could be tremendously successful. In that I think Andrea is motivated. She wants to take the exams when they're offered. Steve Knopf is available to assist her, and will go on do field visits with her, instructing her along the way. And so that's the proposal. And I also checked with our chief financial officer, Brian, Mike Marinaccio, and he said that we did have the funds. The funds could be budgeted to cover this. And it sounds like, hey, you're hiring 2 people to do the work of 1, and really we're hiring Andrea at a reduced level because she's not yet certified, but plans to be, and another person on a part-time basis to assist her in that process. The combined cost of the town would certainly be less than we're currently paying for an in-house sanitarian. Any questions?
The only thing that, again, that I'm really concerned about is not her qualifications to be a sanitarian or Steve's excellent qualifications to mentor her. Is the biggest thing that I would like to see is to somehow address the concerns about the, somebody that knows something about health and the concerns, for the town, some type of a health officer of some kind. Or I know that there seems to be a history of not being overly positive with going with the health district because of some of the problems in the past, and I know I've heard other problems, and Mr. Norm says that East Windsor's had trouble with them, but I don't know, maybe you could help shed some light. You've worked with the health district.
First of all, we do have a health director here in town, Luigi
Yeah.
Santori, who works a few hours a week, but is available.
I
By phone.
guess, yeah, I want to talk to Mr. Satori, because I'm just, not that I question what he's doing, I just like to know what he does specifically do, and wondering about, whether we have a need to expand a role, his role or somebody else, or should we go with the health district?
When he met with us to interview Andrea, he expressed a desire to provide more services to the town, but the fact that he lived in Lebanon seemed to be constrained from being able to physically be here, but said that he would be available via the internet and email, and to review plans and anything else that we needed to have him do. He said he would be willing to do.
Well, would he be willing to come here a day a week?
I don't think he can do that with his current position.
Oh, he has some other
He
job?
has a full-time job.
Oh, he has a full-time
He works for
job.
the health district full-time.
Yeah.
Oh, he works for the health district
Yeah, he
full-time.
works for the North Central Health Department.
Oh,
full-time.
okay. Well, that's good that you know that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that helps the handicapped me, because I was really
Yeah.
did not know that he worked for the
Yeah, he works for the health district.
Well, that's very interesting.
So I guess I would say, number one, I guess we didn't notice public comment, but I guess we could take public comment on this agenda item since we're on it. So I don't see anyone here to speak, but I would certainly welcome any public comment if anyone wanted to weigh in. And I guess there's no one here from the committee either tonight to give an update or report as far as their progress.
I did check with Allison Maynard, who was elected to chair the ad hoc committee. I checked with her this morning. They have interviewed 3 or 4 people, maybe 5, the last one being Heather Otis, the health director for South Windsor, yesterday. And they were impressed with her, for
Yeah.
sure.
So they have interviewed some people.
Yeah, well, they've talked to Jen Roy, to Steve Jacobs.
Luigi.
They talked to Luigi. I'm not
They
sure.
were all on a Zoom
He was on the
call,
Zoom.
so-
Okay, yeah, I missed that call. You were on it.
I listened to it, yeah.
Yeah. And they talked to Heather Otis last night. They have they have a schedule that they've been having difficulty getting their members availability for meetings.
Yeah, that was clear from last
And I
Thursday.
think that Paul Salva basically decided he couldn't meet with them at all because they wanted to have their meetings prior to 5 o'clock, and he has a business that he's a doctor in
Yeah, he's up in
Springfield.
Springfield, yeah.
Doesn't have the time to be away from his practice, so that didn't work out.
So I think we got handed a very kind of difficult task, with the I know that we had this kind of report that summarized some of the work that was done. I did review the report. I think it's riddled with errors and kind of inaccurate information.
You're talking about the email?
this email that lays
Came
out
in
the
on
options.
19th,
I mean, number
yeah.
one, like the costing for the health district is just grossly exaggerated and just flat out incorrect. The wrong per capita rate is listed.
I don't think that was vetted through finance either.
It wasn't vetted. I mean, it was just. I mean, literally, these numbers were made up. I mean, they're saying that they lost revenue of 29,900. That number just isn't. It doesn't come from anywhere. I mean, the revenue was already subtracted at the top, and then they double subtracted the same number. They're reflecting a cost that we have to pay the state $30,000 to join the health district. It's actually the opposite. The state actually gives us a grant. So it's actually revenue and not an expense. So I mean, it's just grossly incorrect. So I think that, I mean, this is kind of what we were handed, and I mean, unfortunately, this was what was given to the committee. I mean, it was very, very little use. I mean, they had to start from scratch.
Yeah, and it was grossly inaccurate.
Grossly inaccurate. I mean, they had to do it over the holidays, with the Thanksgiving holiday, with the impending Christmas holiday. We have a hard deadline of January 1st. Now, I know we did explore interim services. I know South Windsor refused to provide them.
I called the town manager in South Windsor because originally I'd spoken with Heather Otis, suggested she didn't have that authority to allow anyone to come in on an interim basis. And I talked to the town manager, Mike Maniscalco, and he basically stated that they are short-handed themselves and don't have extra people that they could cover our needs for a 3-month window that we thought might be possible.
So we tried to explore, to kind of give the committee some more time. We attempted to negotiate an interim agreement, but we weren't able to do so. And I know there's been some very limited discussions with the health district, but I think even to get interim coverage, or certainly to join the health district, on the short time frame, it would require our action, would require a public hearing. It would then also require the health district's board to bless it as well. And it was very, we were kind of under the gun with time.
Sure. Oh yeah.
I think that, the option here is really the only option that we were left with, given the tight time constraint. I think that it's something that's not going to slam the door to other options in the future.
Right.
For instance, if we were to join the health district, there's actually a state statute that would allow our employee to seamlessly be absorbed into the health district. So if we had, and it's statutory, how this procedure would work. So, we're not necessarily closing doors and closing options by doing this. I think that it potentially could work. I mean, it's definitely contingent on a few things. I mean, number one, this individual is going to need to get certified and pass the registered sanitarian. Number two, our plans we have to get blessed by the commissioner. Part-time health departments, the plan requires commissioner's approval. So I think,
didn't know that.
Yeah, we're probably gonna have to submit something and contingent, but this will buy us some time. That if the commissioner has concerns about the proposed plan, we'll then have some time to come up with another plan. Now, I did have a chance to talk to a few committee members. They did express that they met with South Windsor. They said they were very impressed with South Windsor. I think that one of the committee members told me is they only met with South Windsor for about 20 minutes yesterday. And I think that's tough. I mean, to make such a large decision in 20 minutes time, I think it's just not enough time. I mean, I think it's going to require hours of meetings. I think it's going to require the governing bodies to convene, both in South Windsor and here. There's a lot of hang up around liability and what form that agreement would take. And there's really two forms with South Windsor. We could either form a health district with South Windsor, the two towns, or we could do an intermunicipal agreement under Title VII.
I think that's what was anticipated, I think.
But I think then the concern, and a concern that's never been addressed, and it was not addressed yesterday by the committee, is who would bear the liability should there be a legal action taken as a result of an action taken by the Director of Health in South Windsor. Right now, our part-time Director of Health is our employee. So if that director were to issue an order that was then challenged, the town of Somers would defend it. If we were to join the health district, and the director took an action, the health district would defend it. I think that the question was not answered and couldn't be answered as far as who would defend it and who would be taking on the liability for an action that South Windsor took in Somers. And as far as the adoption of the local health code, the fee schedules, right now the WPCA has a role and stuff in it. It's really unclear. Would South Windsor impose the regulations on Somers, or would the WPCA continue to create them, or would this board create them and then impose them?
I think the plan is that the WPCA, who's the the operator at WPCA.
Daniel Parisi?
Dan
is the
Parisi,
superintendent.
right.
What's WPCA?
So the Water
Pollution
Pollution
Control
Control.
Authority
So
that runs the
historically,
plant in Somersville.
they have
Okay.
overseen the fee schedule that the sanitarian charges, like the restaurant fees and things,
Mhm.
which is kind of an interesting arrangement. So I guess my point with this is that there's a lot of complex issues,
Oh, those fees come to actually the board.
but they're set originally by, and then we
Oh, the
approve them.
yeah, okay.
The
yes.
WPCA sets the schedule, and then we approve them as well, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
At the budget.
But there's a lot of kind of complex legal
Oh,
issues.
this is very complex.
You know,
Very-
I mean, Christmas is coming up in a couple of days, the holidays, January 1st is here.
Right.
South Windsor would not provide the interim services that
Oh,
we
yeah.
requested.
Yeah.
I think we're kind of stuck with our back against the wall. And I think the first selectman came up with a potential solution that, again, doesn't slam doors. Because if we chose then to pursue, say, the health district, we could do that and we could seamlessly fold into the health district with the person now that we're hiring. Or if this person couldn't pass their sanitarian examination,
Mhm.
I mean, they're an at-will employee of the town. So, I mean, we still have maximum options by doing this.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that having interviewed both Andrea and Steve, that I am optimistic that they are both motivated, and I believe that things are going to work out. That's just my personal view. And personally, I think that our best option is to have somebody here in this building that works for the town of Summers,
Mm-hmm.
that provides the services that are so vital to the community.
Very vital.
And that it needs to be timely, needs to be quality services, and the cost needs to be reasonable. Those are the three factors I considered.
Well, I really don't see any problem with Andrea at all. I really like to meet her, but and talk to her.
You certainly will have that opportunity.
And her
She's
resume
great.
looks impressive, and it's nice that she's got such an experienced mentor there willing to help her. I think that's fantastic. So I like that part of the plan, but all the things, Bill, that you've raised about the health issue, I think if we get this in place, this will kind of help us with the things that we need to have, for emergency purposes. And then the next step would be to develop some type of what do we go with South Windsor, North Health District? What do we do? What do we do with Luigi, since he is part of the North Central Health District? How does this all work out?
Yeah.
And I think we need to think about it and develop a plan. And hopefully, maybe if this committee can gather some information, because I remember Allison was saying last Thursday, she felt she wanted to talk to the North Central Health District and find out what's going on. And that woman seemed to be ready to do it. The lady she wanted to talk to, I forget her name.
Yeah,
but
Patrice, yeah.
yeah, and so it sounds like this is a great plan. I
Yeah.
really like this part of it. I think that we don't have to panic, and if we then are calm and develop a next plan to deal with the health district, whether it's our own or with South Windsor or part of the North Central Health, I think just take our time,
Yeah.
be calm, and I think we can do that, and we'll be all right.
Yeah, I appreciate your concerns, Bob. I believe that we could certainly endorse a more robust health program, and we did just sponsor a clinic yesterday. We anticipated some 65 people, and we had 154
Right.
that were given vaccinations, and I was pleased that we were able to do that, and we learned
And
lessons.
that was done by the health district, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, the health district came into
Yeah.
Summers and did the.
Okay, I was just wondering because
Yeah, we learned some lessons from that, and one of them is that we could probably use more than the one unit they provided us. They said you could have maybe 2 or 3 to
Yeah.
provide round 2
is
if
it
you're
true
interested.
that you ran out of vaccines and there were more people?
I'm not sure about. We did have to turn away people. This was announced to be from 9 till 12,
Sure.
and some people were waiting up to 2 hours
Wow.
to get through
It
the
was
system, and it was a cold day. And
Oh yeah.
but I think again, I think that we learned lessons we could improve on next time. But
No, that's good.
the good news is, I think Summers now has a higher vaccination rate than we did on
I hear you.
Monday morning.
Yeah, I
We-
think they got caught off guard. I mean, the president they activated the National Guard and the military to help. I mean, nationwide, this surge. I think between testing and then,
Yeah.
people are waiting days just to get tested. Never
Yeah.
mind. So I'm thinking it was great service that our town staff together with the health
Yeah.
district was able to vaccinate. Even if we turned the fuel away, we got 150 done that we wouldn't have had done otherwise.
Allison
So it's
Maynard
always
did a great
positive.
job
Yeah.
pulling this
Yeah.
together, and
Well, I'll have to say, and my wife didn't want to say anything because she says, well, that's because you're the selectman. So I tried to get her to come. But my wife, does work with the state, and she has been giving shots since March.
what does she do for the state?
I forget the name of the organization that she's involved with. I should have written it down, but she meets with them, through Zoom, about every 2 weeks at night. This organization has retired nurses and healthcare professionals, and my wife, started out at Rockville Hospital, where she was a nurse for 20 years, and she was there back in March, in April, in that time period. Then she was over at Fermi, giving shots over there. Last 3 times she's done boosters. She's been in South Windsor and Windsor twice. She's got another booster appointment in January. I forget what that one's going to be. But the thing is that there is an organized system in the state, and that she's felt really quite good about, how that's done and what they've been doing. And the one in South Windsor went really well. That was for teachers, and she just thought it was tremendous. And the number of teachers that came in South Windsor, and then in Windsor it was public employees, and it just. What they did, though, to make it not so chaotic, was they were able to actually set up times to, registration times for people, and they came in and it went very smoothly. Yeah. So I just think, it was the first time that we had kind of done something like this, but I think we need to work on it, see if we can, and we obviously have a lot of need in this town. Even with those 150 some odd people that got vaccinated, we obviously still have hundreds more that could be vaccinated. So I would like to encourage that. So, if we could do it some more times, and hopefully, I think it'd be to our benefit, without a doubt. And I'd like to see even something with the schools eventually, to see if we could convince the schools to do what Ellington and Rockville did, was allow people to come in and give the kids shots right in the school.
Okay.
I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm kind of.
Oh, we've done them here in summer. We've done. Yeah. But I think you're right. But I think that what we've heard universally is that we need to provide the 10 essential services here. We historically have not in summers.
Right.
I think I would recommend that we hire Andrea and this gentleman, Steve, that we then, I think that the Board of Selectmen can take this work on. I mean, a lot of this work we've learned is kind of regulatory legal work, like I outlined.
Sure.
Things that it's not really fair to give the ad hoc committee to look at. And I think that once Andrea is on board, we can take reports from her to this board as far as how we can enhance, Luigi, some of the others, how we can enhance the capacity here, and whether or not we feel it's still viable for summers to kind of be on their own, or if it makes sense to partner with another town like South Windsor, or if it makes sense to join into a health district. So I think, or maybe we maintain the status quo with our own sanitarian. But I think that this option presented by the first selectman will kind of leave the doors open, and that people will understand, that we're not necessarily closing these other doors.
Right.
This is something that's going to stay on the board's agenda, and that we're going to make sure that we're providing these 10 essential services to our community.
Right.
Yeah,
Great.
I agree with you. Yeah.
So I'd like a motion to authorize the first selectman to hire Andrea Vetrano as a
Sanitarian.
a town sanitarian who is in the process of seeking her Phase 2 and RS licenses certification on a full-time basis, as well as Steve Knaus, a registered sanitarian, on a part-time basis.
So can we add to the motion the start dates and the proposed salary?
Yes, the start date for Andrea would be on the Monday, the 2nd of
Could be
third of January.
So Monday, January 3rd, 2022.
Yep.
And at a salary of
$62,000.
$62,000 per
year. Yeah.
Okay.
And Steve Knaus would start the same week. I'm not sure exactly which day.
Okay.
Haven't decided on that
We'd
yet.
hire him as a part-time employee.
He'd be hired as a part-time employee, no more than
per diem employee.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he said it was 15 hours a week, 45 an hour.
approximately 15 hours a week.
Right.
Per diem.
On the average of 15 hours a
Okay,
week.
yeah.
He doesn't have.
It might be more than 15 hours in one
Okay.
week, but much less.
So he's not
the
going to
next
qualify
week.
for benefits because he's under the...
No, at a rate of $45 per hour.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Do we have that motion?
I'd be happy to make that motion.
Okay, and I'll
Second.
second it.
Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Very nice.
Motion passes.
Okay,
Thank
and
you.
I think as a follow-up and to kind of piggyback on the discussion that we heard, I think that at this point with the hiring of Andrea, I think that it would be appropriate then to dissolve the ad hoc committee since their work is complete. And, we would obviously like, we can take some of their feedback and then the
Yes.
Board of Selectmen, I think, can take this going forward, working together with Andrea, Luigi, and Steve to kind of determine the best path forward for the town for the future.
Yeah. I certainly would hope we would also contact, again, South Windsor if need be, and
Yeah.
the health district again, and so we can.
I think this can be revisited down the road, but I support your motion to dissolve the ad hoc committee. Their work is not exactly it's not complete. They still had additional work to do, but I think that, the opportunities arrived that we could come up with a solution that basically preempted the need for them to report back to us in a few weeks from now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But should we need to reconstitute the board or a similar ad hoc committee in the future, we can do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'd make that motion then to dissolve the committee effective immediately and that the Board of Selectmen will take on the role of monitoring and evaluating the health needs of the town of Summers for the future.
Yeah. I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is to discuss and take action to set the newly elected town clerk's salary.
And Kim, you'll take care of notifying them by email that
I
the committee's
will,
doing?
yeah,
Okay.
don't worry.
Thank you.
No problem, no pleasure.
Okay, there was a memo from
December 16th from Brian.
Brian.
Yes, I have
I
that.
don't seem to have
It should
it.
be in your file.
Here you go.
You can have, well, I was going to say, you know,
Okay, thanks. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So we need to set a salary for our newly elected town clerk. He is someone that comes to us even though he has not had any experience as a town clerk. He has volunteered the last several weeks of his time to come in here every day, about 35 hours a week, to get trained by our current town clerk, who is an amazing instructor from what I hear. And Dave Marty has the experience of having run his own business for 7 or 8 years here in Summers. DG Graphics also has significant experience with food store chain. Which one was it?
what's that?
He worked for
He was like a
grocery.
manager for, yes, he was a manager at,
For-
Yeah, I remember. I don't remember if it was IGA or somebody
No,
like
I
that.
didn't know that.
with like marketing or something,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was a big store right off of 190. Hazard Ave.
Not know that about him.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so he has a very strong background in working independently, and he's got a great attitude. He sought this job because of the public service nature of it and the fact that he felt he could do a good job for Summers. I think we're lucky that we have him. Basically, he's got big shoes to fill, but I think he's very capable, and I'm optimistic that he'll soon qualify. He needs to be certified is the correct word, but it takes, by statute, 2.5 years before you can actually reach certification. It doesn't mean you can't hit the ground running and start the job the day you start it, but it just means the actual certification. So there was a survey that was done by Brian Wissinger that looked at other towns and basically said the average salary for town clerks in Talon County is $72,902. And he said that he felt that because this person is not certified, that in his mind, the salary range should be somewhere 10 to 20% below the average market rate of what he calls 73. He says $73,902, which he pegs that range at between 59 and 66,000. Anyway, that's what we have before us. Any discussion here?
I did speak to Ann Logan about this too, before I knew that Brian had investigated and looked at some of the same information I did. And so Ann had sent me the statistics for what different town clerks make for the entire state. And I went through and just looked at the 13 ones that were elected and across the state, and focused a little bit on the ones here, next to us, and which weren't a whole lot of them that were next to us. Most of them,
like Suffield,
yeah,
East Windsor.
The only one that really came that was close was Windsor Locks. They have 13,000 residents. I looked up our population as the last census. I haven't seen the new census come out, but we had a lot, 11.5. We could be a little bit higher, but I thought our population was similar to Windsor Locks. They also have, at this point, a non-certified person working. That's 67,000. That was kind of one of the highest numbers. Nearby was 67. And then some of them were even lower in the state, as low as 59,000. So it's hard to get an exact number, and I think that's where Brian came up with a number of 62.5 is what he recommended. But I really kind of looking.
But I'd just like to say that's just sort of looking at the statistics primarily.
Correct.
I think you need to look at the individual,
right,
and the experience as a professional, and the potential he has for doing a terrific job.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is he does have a lot of skills, but what I'd like to do is wait and see, to be honest with you, before I gave him a really high salary, see how he does in a year or two, and particularly after the election that's going to be coming up this coming fall. That's going to be something that's going to be a real test, to say the least. Having been registrar of voters, there's all sorts of new laws that he has to follow now, and there's a lot to learn.
Of course,
it's a very complex process, and it really is. It's not as simple as it used to be. Not that it was simple, but the legislature has added a lot of steps to what they have to do and a lot of responsibility. So what I'm trying to do to him is wait, his experience, but I also have to realize that he doesn't have a lot of experience with doing some of these tasks that he's going to do. And I kind of look at the philosophy that was used with this young lady, Andrea. She's got very impressive credentials, and yet she's going to be kind of in a similar situation, the way I kind of look at her. She's kind of new kid on the block. She's going to be gaining her certification hopefully in the near future, and she's getting herself mentored. And so I kind of see them as similar. So
well, you got to also realize that the town of Summers elected Dave Marty to do this job. So they basically said, hey, this is the person we want for the next 4 years to do this work. So I think that's an endorsement right there that I think is not comparable to Andrea.
Well, I also looked. I just happened to be having a conversation today with a tax collector, and all I hear is outstanding things about her from the people that work with her.
Mm-hmm.
And
are you talking about Andrea?
Yeah.
Lisa?
The tax collector.
Lisa.
Lisa
Yeah. Lisa. I'm sorry, Lisa Madden.
Like this?
Lisa Madden. Yeah. And
Like that's not
she offered up just in a casual conversation that she makes $69,000. And I said, oh, okay. I didn't know how much she had made. And she said, as a matter of fact, somebody had offered her for another town $79,000 just recently. And so what I'm saying is, here's a lady with a lot of experience, doing well, making 69. So I would And I would hate to give somebody with very little experience and another job in town and say, you're going to make the same amount of money as an experienced person in another department. So I guess I'm trying to keep the salary
I'd like to see the
realistic.
salary somewhere between 65 and 70 myself, and I think that's totally fair. And I'd like to hear from Bill what his thoughts are. I know that your thinking is it would be nice to have set this salary several weeks ago prior to the election.
Well, that's where, I mean, I kind of see us in very dangerous territory, and I think that, you know, from the past few years, I mean, we've learned there's kind of been a heavy reliance on, you know, past precedent, and I think here, I mean, we could potentially set a very dangerous precedent, and what I'm concerned about is setting the salary after the election. And I guess you could envision a scenario, you know, like in this case here, the individual ran unopposed, and the individual is from the same political affiliation as the majority of the Board of Selectmen. So in this case, and this salary starting things are being done with this individual's permission and consent. So, you know, I think that this is being done kind of an objective fashion. But you could imagine the facts being a little bit different and having a contested race, you know, where people from two different parties run, and then the person from the other party wins, and the Board of Selectmen then comes in and says, well, we're upset that you won. And now, seriously, I mean, this is happening.
No, I know.
And your salary, I mean, they tried to do this with the chief administrative officer, you know, where they tried to reduce the salary of the first selectman considerably to make the job not appealing, you know, from the current $93,000 down to $25,000.
That's just crazy.
But that, I mean, that passed that passed through a prior Board of Selectmen. I mean, just in the past year, they voted on it and passed it, adopted it. It was subsequently overturned
In May.
But I think we're kind of in that same dangerous territory where a salary has been set, an individual was elected at the salary that was set. You know, the time to make the change would have been before the election. And, you know, maybe to have a two-tiered system, regardless of who wins, to say if you're certified, you're going to get paid at this rate. If you're not certified, you're going to get paid at this rate. It doesn't matter who wins. Certification's objective. You're either certified or you're not. It's something to the state.
The problem is,
And then we move
in
forward.
a case like that, though, in this case, we knew we only had one candidate, so it doesn't really make that much difference. I mean,
Well, we didn't know. We had a contested Board of Selectmen race. So, I mean, the Board of Selectmen could have been comprised of, you know, a mix. I mean, we didn't know the outcome of the race. So, I mean, really, I guess that what I'm concerned about is
I knew what the outcome was.
Well, you did, but I mean, for Bob and I, you know, Bob and I had an opponent. So, I mean, if the outcome had been different, the composition of the board would have been different, and the majority of the board would.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess my point would be, you know, Bob, and I hear what
But-
you're saying. I mean, I think that based on the analysis and things,
Yeah.
that, you know, the salary that Brian mentions, you know, maybe in line with the market. I'm glad you did I haven't had time to do the research myself independently. I'm relying on others. But I think given light of the circumstances, you know, I think if we do nothing, which there's a pretty strong argument to do nothing, the salary would stay at $77,000.
Well, I would be stunned
But I
if
think,
that happened.
but I think that if we act now, and I think to be fair to the individual, you know, I would be more in line with something, you know, like $68,000 or so, just to be fair, you know, to the person, because it was an oversight, and this should have been addressed before the election. And I think in the future, and I want to make sure the minutes reflect this, you know, that this needs to be addressed prior to the election. That the idea of the Board of Selectmen setting a salary after an election is problematic.
Oh, yeah.
It's very problematic. You know, so I think we're kind of stuck, and I don't want to go too low on the salary because, I mean, this person may very well have gotten elected expecting they're going to get $77,000 a year. And I don't think that's an unfair assumption.
Well, it's unfortunate they did. But if they did, you know, because I worked as a teacher for years, and, you know, you didn't assume you're going to be making a lot of money as a public employee.
Yeah.
And that's just something that you naturally assumed. And, you know, I grew up with my dad, who was a public employee. He's a college professor, and we lived in poverty for years, seriously, absolute poverty for years. And so that's something that I just saying I was used to the fact that if you work for the public, you're not going to make a lot of money in most cases. And I guess what I'm saying is the limit I would like to set, just because of that, looking at the statistics, would be 67.
Okay.
And the reason why is because I'm looking at the towns around, and Windsor Locks is the highest in around our area with a similar size, and I think 67 is, you know, reasonable. I wouldn't necessarily agree with what Brian came up with, 62.5. I thought that was too low.
Yep.
But I certainly think 67 would be a compromise for me. You said 68.
I'd say the
or
compromise
67.
is 67.5.
Like, I was thinking the same thing, actually.
I mean, I'd agree to either 67 or 67.5. I think that either, I know, Bob, I think that's fair.
I'm into compromise.
What do you think, Bob? What do you, I mean,
I'm still stuck on 67, to be honest with you, so I'm sorry.
let's do 67,000. I think that based on, I mean, he's done the
That's
research, I
fine.
think.
I'm paying the butt,
All
I
right.
know, so.
Yeah.
All
Okay,
right,
I'm
so
fine
do
with
we have a
that.
motion to set the newly elected town clerk salary at $67,000 per year?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
So I just want to make sure that we reflect clearly in the minutes, you know,
Yes.
that this is kind of I don't know, how do we word this? I mean, I think that this is something that should not be a precedent setting, and that, you know, for future boards of selectmen, the salary should be set prior to the election.
I agree. Well, you know, one of the things that I've talked to some of the people that work in town hall and several of the departments, and one of the things that I think we really need to look at is, because we don't have anybody in human resources, you know,
Yeah.
here, is that maybe we need to take a look at developing a salary schedule
Yes.
I
for
agree.
and I've
We've
heard.
been trying
Agreed.
to do that, so that's been something that.
A step
at least
schedule, a
Public
salary
Radio tried to
schedule,
do.
yes.
Yes, and I think that then takes a lot of this away from us.
You're right.
And I think it makes it a lot more objective.
I
Exactly.
concur.
Yes.
And then that way, to me, whoever is doing the evaluations,
Yes.
then they can say, oh, well, this is what you're supposed to be, and you have a good evaluation, you should get that.
Yes.
But I'm a little disappointed
But-
in this case that you didn't meet that, so you're not getting up
Yeah.
to that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, makes
So
sense.
it's and I think that's a fair thing, and then that way it's out in the open.
But again, Bill's suggestion to make the decision prior to the election, I'm not totally comfortable with that, in that I think a lot of the salary depends on who the person is, what their experience is, what kind of energy they have, how suitable they are for the job, how likely they are to succeed. I mean, I think those are factors that come into play that you can't assign those factors until you know who the person is, right? I mean,
In some cases, I would agree with that, yeah.
I'm not sure that your approach is the best approach in every case. I can appreciate the interest in setting the salary beforehand, but at the same time, I think you need to consider who the person is
And I would agree with you. I
and
think
their ability. I mean, what they can do for the town.
I think, you know, if everyone in this world had good intentions, I think that would be a factual. I think that'd be very accurate. I just think, unfortunately, whether true or not, perceived or not, that people are going to claim politics. You know, I think you remove that from the equation if you set it prior to the election. I mean, Tim, I don't disagree. Like, for someone like Andrea, who's a civil
Except
servant.
if you've got a Democrat board of selectmen and you know that a Republican's getting elected, I'm not sure you want to set, and Democrats aren't going to be in charge after the election. I'm not sure you want to set that salary before the election.
Well, you could always increase it. You could always increase a salary during the term. What we're doing here is we're decreasing the salary. So that's what I have an issue with. I don't have any issue with increasing the salary.
When do you increase it, though? I mean, with the new person coming on board.
Well, I think that's why I was looking at some type of a salary schedule.
A salary schedule would be a good idea.
And see, that way we'll know. And the thing
Maybe that's
is,
something CROG or CCM can help us.
Oh,
Yeah.
they have them. Every town has these.
exactly. And I remember
And
the
I'd like
labor
to follow
attorney,
up with something like
Yeah.
that.
the labor attorney, I forget the gentleman's name.
Pat McHale.
Pat McHale, he had said, without a doubt.
We're going to get him on the phone here.
Oh, I'm
real soon.
sorry.
Yeah,
I said without a doubt. He said without a doubt he's got all sorts of access to all this information.
Right.
And he'd be more than willing to help us out.
Right.
So to me,
Yeah.
I think that's the way you do it in an objective fashion. Then you take the politics out of it. You develop something, then you and I don't have to get into this
Yeah.
type of situation. And, you know, I heard some unfortunate things, I don't know, about, you know, the salary that was promised to, you know, the rec director at one time, and then she's not getting that salary.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
that's the kind of stuff that
yeah,
concerns me.
The good news is, I think you're on the right track with regards to the salary schedule. Very
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah.
And we'll try to
I agree
pursue
with
that
everything you said, Bob.
with some HR
Oh, thank you.
assistance. Can we adjourn this meeting?
Let's
and-
make the
and-
vote. We didn't take a vote yet. We didn't vote on the salary, right? This is still discussion.
I think you
We
just
did vote
talked
on the
about it.
salary.
We did not
Okay,
vote.
okay.
You just, so the
Vote
motion
this-
was to, yeah, you just need to all in favor. of
67,000.
Yeah,
All
67,000.
those in support of
Yes.
the
Aye.
motion?
Aye.
Thank you.
all right, that's a date.
Now, if we could just have a motion to adjourn, then
We
we
don't
can.
adjourn, we actually
No,
make
you
a
gotta-
motion. to go
Okay,
into
a motion to
executive
go into executive session.
Okay.
We need a 2/3 vote.
So I'd like to make a
to,
motion that the Board of Selectmen enter executive session for the purpose of discussing documents and communications privileged by the attorney-client relationship.
Okay, and you're inviting Pat.
And we're
Concerning
inviting
a
Pat
personnel
McHale
matter. Yep.
to
Okay.
join us.
All right.
All right, so
I'll
I'm just
second
gonna-
that.
I'm gonna call him.
All those in favor, any discussion? Any further discussion?
I'll-
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, thank you.